putting their party's power above the people's. They sow the seeds of cynicism and cause too many Americans to tune out of our politics. That's because it escalates polarization, that rewards political dysfunction, and emboldens the extremes on both sides of the aisle. And it provides little to no incentive for the public to engage. We are here today to show the Supreme Court that the public does care about these issues. It may seem like wonky election issues, but it has a real impact on people's lives. Voters recognize that highly gerrymandered legislatures are moving more extreme agendas driven by polarization and the safe seats that gerrymandering creates. We have worked with colleagues like the League of Conservation Voters, the National Education Association, and the League of Women Voters in Wisconsin to show that partisan gerrymandering in Wisconsin results in the adoption of policies that are more partisan and extreme than residents in Wisconsin. For example, in Wisconsin, there is a historic pride in clean government. And several years ago, Wisconsinites put in place an independent government accountability board. This board was set to oversee and enforce compliance with ethics, campaign finance, and election laws. But the gerrymandered legislature dismantled the independent government accountability board. Why did they do that? They did it because they wanted a weaker partisan agency in control, because they didn't want anybody to be investigating their actions. There was an investigation that the Government Accountability Board put in place with Scott Walker and special interest money that were flowing into recall elections. And they don't want accountability, and they don't want enforcement of clean government rules. We also saw funding for K through 12 and public universities being very important to Wisconsin citizens. Huge proportions. Democrats, Republicans, and Independents support that. And what did the highly partisan legislature do? They slashed funding for those programs. We also see strong bipartisan support for conservation and environmental reforms. And what did the highly partisan gerrymandered legislature do? They cut and slashed those programs. In North Carolina, another state where we see huge partisan gerrymander in place, we saw the Republican legislature ban transgender bathrooms. More than 80% of the population supported having transgender bathrooms, but they didn't move. And then when we saw the NCAA, the NBA's All-Star Game, concert venues, and other businesses saying we are not going to North Carolina, businesses suffered and the state lost millions of dollars. Did the Republican legislature act? No. Why? They're in safe districts. They don't care what the people think. We also saw North Carolina put in place a power grab in terms of a terrible voting measure that put discriminatory laws on the books, including slashing early voting, discriminatory voter ID, in order to ensure their partisan advantage. So the need for districts is not just a problem in red states. We heard from Joanne, this is also a problem in blue states like Maryland. And so that's why we have a bipartisan set of legislators, Arnold Schwarzenegger, U.S. Senator John McCain, Ohio Governor John Kasich, joining Democrats like Sheldon Whitehouse in Rhode Island and Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin to support an end to partisan gerrymandering. The American people understand how politicians in both parties are stacking the deck against the people. And as a result, we are seeing an unprecedented groundswell of support for the end to partisan gerrymandering. We are seeing reforms moving in states, and we are also seeing people gathering at events like this. In North Carolina today, leaders from Common Cause's North Carolina HBCU Student Alliance, the historically black college and universities, are marching through the largest HBCU in North Carolina A&T, the home of the Aggies. And they're marching on a street that literally divides the campus in two. On the left is the 13th Congressional District, and on the right is the 6th Congressional District. Why was that gerrymander put in place? Because it is 10,000 black students, and that's a powerful voting bloc. And so they divided them right down the center. And so we have the impact of this can not just be about policies, but also directly affect and assault on the rights of Black and African American students in North Carolina. The Supreme Court could end gerrymandering as we know it in this Whitford case. Although the Whitford case is before the Supreme Court and dealing specifically with state legislative districts in Wisconsin, if the court affirms the lower court ruling in Wisconsin, it will be establishing the principle that partisan politicians and special interests can no longer rig the system by manipulating voting maps. Action from the Supreme Court could reduce costs of litigation and also set a clear standard that makes it clear to state legislatures as they're drawing maps, here is a line you cannot cross. In America, no liberty is more fundamental than the right to freely choose our representatives through voting. When politicians manipulate the rules and choose their voters instead, it leads to dysfunction and legislative bodies that do not care about their constituents. It is time to end this practice. Thank you very much.
Go! Hey, hey, ho, ho! Gerrymandering has to go!
I'm Tom Schwarzenegger from New York 3rd Congressional District. The partisan divide in our country today is mainly caused by partisan gerrymandering. Everybody's sick of politics, they're sick of politicians, they're sick of the finger pointing, and they're sick of people not getting things done. Why is it happening? In the House of Representatives, of which I'm a member, there are about 435 seats, of which 400, thank you. There's 435 seats in the House of Representatives, of which 400 are safe seats, which guarantee if you're a Republican, you're going to win re-election in a Republican seat. If you're in a Democratic seat, guaranteed you're going to win re-election in the Democratic seat. So you can't lose the general election. If you can't lose the general election, the only way you can lose is if you lose a primary. And very few people vote in a primary. So who votes in a primary? Less than 10% of the people vote in a primary. They're often to the more extremes of the party. The far left for the Democrats, the far right for the Republicans. If you're a congressperson who can't lose a general election and you just want to keep one wing of your party happy, you're going to try and please that wing of your party. The Democrats will try and please the left, the Republicans will try and please the right. If you try and do anything in the middle, you're going to get squashed like a bug. You're going to lose your primary. That's the problem that's going on in our country right now. All these safe seats result in politicians not pandering to the people, not pandering to the general public. They pander to the base of their party. We must get rid of partisan gerrymandering in America. To force elected officials to be subject to the only thing that makes democracy work, competition. People battling over ideas. I have a better idea than you do. I have a better way of doing it more effectively. I have a better way of doing it cheaper, of helping more people. I've got a better way of doing it. That competition only happens in competitive seats. In our country today, we do not have competitive seats. The reason we don't have competitive seats is because of partisan gerrymandering. This lawsuit today, this case being argued before the Supreme Court today, if the Supreme Court decides, as we hope that they do, that partisan gerrymandering is illegal, it will change the partisanship of this country, and it will force Americans to work together with each other to try and get things done on behalf of the people they serve. I want to thank all the different groups that are up here today for putting so much time. It's a long journey to get from where this all started in Wisconsin to this lawsuit today with all these people organized like this. Don't underestimate how powerful you are by bringing this to the public's attention. Please continue to try and educate people why partisan gerrymandering is destroying our country and is making it overly partisan. Together, we can make a difference here, but now we need the Supreme Court to help us. Hey, hey, ho, ho, gerrymandering has to go! Hey, hey, ho, ho, gerrymandering has to go! Hey, hey, ho, ho, gerrymandering has to go!
Hey, hey, ho, ho!
Gerrymandering has to go! Hey, hey, ho, ho! Gerrymandering has to go!
Americans Advancing Justice. Our mission is to advance the civil and human rights of Asian Americans and to promote and build a fair and just society for all. We are part of a national affiliation with 5 other partners in Atlanta, Chicago, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. We joined an amicus brief this morning as part of the effort to establish reasonable standards for redistricting and to oppose extreme partisan gerrymandering. The reason we did this is quite simple. It is because communities of color have much to lose with the gerrymandering that is happening right now. Asian Americans represent the fastest growing population in the United States right now. Over the past 7 years, 1/4 of our population growth in the U.S. is based on Asian Americans. Now, unfortunately, our representation in federal legislatures and state legislatures does not reflect our current demographics. And unfortunately, this is true of many, and all communities of color. The truth is this. What happens is our communities get split apart into different districts so that our votes get diluted. Our votes do not end up counting the same, so our voices are not heard. Instead of being talked to, instead of having a discussion with us, we are being talked at. That is not democracy. That is not what our nation is founded on. And that is why we stand in solidarity with everyone in wanting to establish reasonable redistricting standards. The truth is this. We need to have conversations across all lines. By having safe districts, that is not happening. Instead of having a general election where ideas are discussed, where ideas are debated, we're only talking to our ideological base. And for a community of color, we get ignored. People aren't even talking to us at all. And so that is why we need to have some mechanism to bring everyone together, to have real conversation, to have conversations between communities of color, to have conversation between different religions, different ethnicities, different people of sexual orientation. We need to have these conversations. We need to have these conversations in a reasonable manner.
Americans. What we have in my home state is a set of maps that distorts public sentiment. You know, Michigan is one of those purple states, and we know that they're always going to be in play. Those states like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, the ones we talk about, each one of them have had their democratic rights distorted. Individuals in those states, their democratic rights distorted by maps that emphasize one ideology or one party and de-emphasizes another. That's not democracy. You know, people often wonder, why can't Congress act on the big questions that we face as a country? Why can't we get common sense bill to deal with immigration reform? Because the Congress is not a reflection of the body politic. The Congress is not a reflection of public sentiment. Why can't we get common sense gun safety legislation that most Americans support? Because Congress does not represent the views of the American people. They have been distorted by maps that are intended to emphasize a particular ideology, a particular point of view, a particular party. That is wrong. That is wrong. And it has to stop. And it has to stop now. If we are going to be a democracy, we have to have a government that represents the broad views of the American people. And when in my state, we have this 50-50 state that has 9 Republicans and 5 Democrats in that House of Representatives, that has a state legislature with 63 Republicans out of just over 100, that has a state Senate. This is a purple state with 27 Republicans and 11 Democrats. No wonder the big questions that we face can't get answered in a way consistent with the wishes, with the feelings, with the sentiments, with the needs of the American people. It's because our maps, our gerrymandering is a carnival image of the body politic. It emphasizes some aspects and de-emphasizes others. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. And it has to end now. And since the legislature, the legislators who benefit from the maps are the ones who draw the maps, this is the building we have to turn to have our rights restored. And we're calling on this court, Democrats and Republicans coming together to restore that democratic principle that is the foundation of this country. We all deserve equal representation, and unless this court acts, we may not have that. Thank you for your voices. Thank you for being here. Let's keep up this fight. Thank you all.
The League of Women Voters is in the House for this important issue. What an important day it is today for our democracy. Behind us in the highest court in the land, 9 men and women are eagerly listening to arguments about an issue that has plagued our election system for far too long. Gerrymandering. It is a big word, but its meaning, as has already been noted, is quite simple. This is the process of politicians unfairly drawing electoral maps to benefit themselves and their political parties, not the voters. The result? Dysfunction, mistrust, and public policies that do not represent the will of the people. In Wisconsin, in North Carolina, in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, and all across the country, there are some real crazy electoral maps. Wouldn't you agree? Yes. Districts that don't make sense, that cross school districts, that break up communities. And for what? So that politicians pick their electorate, not voters deciding who should represent them? It is high time we take charge of this and put an end to partisan gerrymandering. And it can be done. In California, the League of Women Voters was part of a successful statewide referendum that ended gerrymandering of political districts. As already noted, we formed a coalition across the political spectrum. The business sector, labor organizations, and concerned members of the community all came together to create a ballot measure. The intent? To be fair to voters. That is what voters wanted. More equality in the system. So working across party lines, we formed an independent commission that redrew the electoral map in California, and it restored the public trust. The districts were drawn for the voters, not for the special interests or any particular political party. Around the country and other states, both parties have taken advantage of partisan gerrymandering when they are in power. In Maryland, Democrats have openly admitted to drawing district lines to benefit their own party, and that has always been part of the game. The party in charge controls the map, but today is the beginning of the end. No, let's do that again. Today is the beginning of the end. As I stand here speaking to you, those 9 justices are listening to arguments that will impact the boundaries that are drawn in the near future. We know that partisan gerrymandering is wrong, and it has even been deemed unconstitutional. But until now, there hasn't been a test. It's up to the justices to set a standard, to determine when partisan gerrymandering is so extreme that it violates the Constitution. Inside that building behind us, real voters are making their case that partisan gerrymandering has denied them a voice in their state selection. Those brave voters are not alone. Extreme partisanship is harmful to voters across the country, and it is harmful to our democracy. This case will literally shake the face of this country. We have a census coming up in a few short years. Now is the time to set the parameters that help create the maps which strengthen our communities and draw districts that reflect their populations. It is up to the Supreme Court to create ground rules that will help restore trust in our electoral system and create a more democratic and fairer country. This case, make no mistake, is about fairness. Fairness to the voters. Americans deserve fair, equal representation in our democracy. Why? Because voters should select their elected representatives. Voters should select their elected representatives. Elected representatives should not choose their voters. Let's give the power back where it belongs. Let's give the power back to the voters. Let's end partisan gerrymandering. Thank you.
Let's move.
Politicians choose, the voters always lose. When politicians choose, the voters always lose. When politicians choose, the voters always lose.
We're tired of your tampering. Stop your gerrymandering.
We're tired of your tampering. Stop your gerrymandering.
We're tired of your tampering.
Stop your gerrymandering.
You have to do better than that.
Stop your gerrymandering.
Tired of your tampering.
Stop your gerrymandering.
Please join me in welcoming our next speaker, former Governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Mr. Universe.
Hello, everybody. Hello. It's wonderful to be here in Washington. And I'm looking at the building. I'm talking about Congress now. They have an approval rating of 16%. Herpes and colonoscopies are more popular than Congress. But for some miracle reason, 98% of them get reelected. The reason is because it's a fixed system. It's a fixed system. That's what gerrymandering is all about. And this is why I say that the only one that can fix it is the Supreme Court. And that's why we are here today, the Supreme Court, to ask them to fix this problem of severe gerrymandering. Because Einstein already said a long time ago that the ones that create the problem cannot fix it. And so Congress will never ever fix this problem because they have one interest and one interest only, and this is to stay in power. No matter what the cost of to stay in power. This is why this is a sham to protect the incumbent. When you protect the incumbent, there's no competition. And when there's no competition, there's no performance. And this is why now, for decades, they've talked about fixing our immigration system. For decades, they've talked about fixing our infrastructure. For decades, they've talked about fixing our universal health care system. For decades, they've talked about lowering the debt and the deficit. They have talked about all of those problems and nothing is getting done. And at the same time, 98% of them getting reelected. So you know it is a fixed system. You know it's a system where the politicians are picking the voters rather than the voters picking the politicians. So I say it is time to say hasta la vista to gerrymandering. And it is time to terminate gerrymandering.